Hello and welcome to my channel. I hope you enjoy this story. I'm going to try and upload a new story each day. The Shadowed Scriptorium. Chapter 1: The Discovery. Holly Arnold had always been fascinated by the old libraries that dotted the Isle of Wight. As the head librarian of the ancient Red Library, she was surrounded by the smell of aged paper, the soft whispers of pages turning, and the comforting weight of history. The library was a labyrinth of knowledge, its walls lined with books dating back centuries. Holly had often felt a sense of peace in its hallowed halls, but that all changed on a cold autumn evening. While reorganizing the library's basement, Holly stumbled upon a loose floorboard. Curiosity piqued, she pried it open, revealing a narrow stone staircase descending into darkness. With a flashlight in hand and a racing heart, she descended the steps, the air growing colder with each step. At the bottom, she found herself in a hidden chamber filled with dust-covered manuscripts, the likes of which she had never seen before. The manuscripts were written in an unfamiliar script, one that seemed to shift and writhe on the pages as if alive. Holly, ever the scholar, felt the thrill of excitement. This discovery could be groundbreaking. She carefully transported the manuscripts to her office and began the arduous task of deciphering them. Chapter 2: The Manuscripts. Days turned into weeks as Holly pored over the manuscripts. She barely slept, consumed by the challenge. Slowly, she began to make sense of the strange language. It spoke of ancient rituals, forgotten gods, and dark powers. The texts hinted at a powerful entity imprisoned beneath the library, a being of shadow and malice that had been sealed away centuries ago by a group of monks who had built the library atop its prison to guard against its release. Holly's excitement was tempered by a growing sense of unease. The more she translated, the more she felt an oppressive presence looming over her. Shadows seemed to dance at the edge of her vision, and she could swear she heard whispers in the dead of night. One manuscript stood out among the rest. It detailed a ritual for awakening the entity, promising power and knowledge in exchange for release. Holly's scholarly curiosity warred with her sense of caution. But as she delved deeper, she felt an inexplicable compulsion to continue. Chapter 3: Awakening. One stormy night, driven by an obsession she could not understand, Holly found herself in the hidden chamber once more. The manuscripts in hand, she began to recite the incantations aloud. The air grew thick with an unnatural cold, and the shadows seemed to twist and convulse around her. As she spoke the final words, a deafening silence fell. Then a low rumble shook the chamber, and the ground beneath her feet cracked open. From the fissure, a dark, amorphous form began to rise, its presence suffocating and vile. Holly stumbled back, realizing too late the gravity of her actions. The entity, a shadow-given form, loomed over her, its eyes, if they could be called that, gleaming with malevolence. It whispered to her in a voice like rusted metal scraping against stone, promising power, knowledge, and immortality. But Holly knew she had made a grave mistake. Chapter 4: The Battle. The library, once a sanctuary, had become a battleground. The entity spread its influence, turning the once peaceful halls into a realm of darkness. Books flew off shelves, shadows writhed and twisted, and the very walls seemed to pulse with an eerie life. Holly knew she had to act fast to contain the evil she had unleashed. Using the knowledge she had gleaned from the manuscripts, Holly began to devise a counter-ritual. It was a desperate gamble, but the only chance she had to save the library and perhaps the world. She gathered the necessary items, candles, chalk, and a silver dagger inscribed with ancient runes. As she prepared the ritual in the heart of the library, the entity attacked. Shadows lashed out at her, cold tendrils wrapping around her limbs, pulling her into the darkness. Holly fought back, reciting the incantations with all her strength, her voice steady despite the terror gripping her heart. The candles flickered, casting a weak circle of light. Holly drew the runes on the floor, her hands shaking but determined. As she made the final cut with the dagger, her blood mingling with the chalk, she felt a surge of energy. The entity howled in rage, the shadows convulsing and retreating. Chapter 5: The Sacrifice. The counter-ritual was working, but it demanded a sacrifice. Holly felt her strength waning, her life force being drawn into the ritual. The entity screamed, a sound that echoed through the library, shattering windows and shaking the very foundation of the building. Holly knew she had to hold on, to give everything she had to banish the darkness. With the last of her strength, Holly completed the ritual. A blinding light filled the chamber, and the entity shrieked one final time before being sucked back into the fissure from which it had emerged. The ground sealed itself, and the oppressive weight lifted from the air. Holly collapsed, her vision dimming. She knew she had succeeded, but at a great cost. As darkness claimed her, she felt a strange peace, knowing she had protected the world from the ancient evil. Epilogue. The library stood silent and still, a monument to the battle that had taken place within its walls. Holly's colleagues found her the next morning, her body lifeless but her expression serene. They discovered the hidden chamber and the manuscripts, now inert and harmless. The story of Holly Arnold and the Shadowed Scriptorium became a legend, a tale of bravery and sacrifice. The library was restored, but the hidden chamber was sealed off, a reminder of the darkness that had once lurked beneath. Holly's legacy lived on, her name remembered as the librarian who had saved the Isle of Wight from an ancient evil. And in the quiet moments, when the light was just right, some claimed they could still hear the faint whisper of pages turning, a gentle reminder of the battle fought and the peace that had been won. Chapter 6. The Aftermath. Months passed, and the Ride Library reopened to the public. The townsfolk returned, blissfully unaware of the horrors that had transpired beneath their feet. The hidden chamber was locked away, its secrets buried with Holly. A plaque was placed in the library in her honor, commemorating her bravery and dedication. Despite the outward normalcy, subtle changes permeated the library. The air was colder in certain sections, and at night the soft hum of whispered voices could be heard. A few patrons reported seeing a shadowy figure among the stacks, but these sightings were dismissed as figments of imagination or tricks of the light. Chapter 7. New Beginnings. Emily Harris, a young librarian with a passion for history, was hired to fill Holly's position. She had heard the stories and felt a mixture of awe and trepidation stepping into her predecessor's shoes. Emily was determined to honor Holly's legacy by continuing her work with diligence and care. One evening, as Emily was closing up, she felt a sudden chill. She turned to see a shadow flicker at the edge of her vision. Heart-pounding, she approached the spot, only to find a single book out of place. It was one of the ancient manuscripts Holly had been studying. Carefully, Emily picked it up and placed it back on the shelf. But as she did, a piece of paper slipped out and floated to the floor. Emily unfolded it to find a note written in Holly's meticulous handwriting, but where the shadows, the entity is contained but not destroyed, the scriptorium's secrets must remain hidden. Trust no one. Chapter 8. The Return. Haunted by Holly's note, Emily began to research the manuscripts with renewed urgency. She discovered references to other sites of power around the world, places where similar entities had been imprisoned. Each site had its own guardian, individuals chosen to protect the seals. Holly had been one such guardian, and now the mantle had passed to Emily. As Emily delved deeper, the shadows seemed to grow bolder. She felt watched, pursued. Books would fall from shelves, lights would flicker, and strange symbols appeared in the dust. One night she found herself drawn to the hidden chamber. The lock had been broken, the door ajar. With a deep breath, she descended the steps, flashlight in hand. The chamber was as cold and foreboding as the first time Holly had discovered it. The manuscripts lay scattered, and the air was thick with a malevolent presence. Emily realized with horror that the entity was stirring once more. It had not been defeated, merely dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Chapter 9. Allies in Darkness. Desperate for help, Emily reached out to other scholars and experts in ancient languages and rituals. Among them was Dr. Marcus Grant, an occult historian with a reputation for dealing with the supernatural. He arrived on the Isle of Wight, bringing with him a wealth of knowledge and a cautious optimism. Together, Emily and Marcus pieced together the fragments of Holly's research. They discovered that the entity, known as Azeroth, had followers cultists who sought to release it and harness its power. These cultists had infiltrated the library, breaking the seal and aiding in Azeroth's resurgence. Emily and Marcus prepared for a final confrontation. They gathered artifacts, created protective wards, and planned a ritual to strengthen the seal. The library became their battleground, each corner a potential ambush, each shadow a lurking threat. Chapter 10: The Final Confrontation. On a moonless night, the library was plunged into darkness. The cultists attacked, their eyes glowing with unholy light, chanting incantations that filled the air with dread. Emily and Marcus fought back, their protective wards holding the cultists at bay. In the hidden chamber, the seal was weakening. Azeroth's form began to coalesce, a swirling mass of darkness and malevolence. Emily and Marcus stood at the center of the chamber, chanting the counter-ritual. The candles flickered and the ground trembled as the battle between light and darkness raged. Emily felt the shadows closing in, suffocating her. Marcus faltered, his voice breaking as he struggled against the entity's pull. Summoning all her strength, Emily reached out and took his hand, their combined voices rising in a final, desperate chant. The chamber exploded in light. Azeroth shrieked, the sound reverberating through the library, shaking its very foundations. The cultists screamed and fled, their bodies dissolving into ash. The ground sealed itself once more, and the oppressive presence lifted. Epilogue: The Legacy. Emily and Marcus emerged from the chamber, exhausted but victorious. The library was silent, the shadows banished. They knew the battle was not over, the entity was still imprisoned, and the cultists would surely try again. But for now, the library was safe. Emily took her place as the new guardian of the Scriptorium, dedicating herself to protecting its secrets. The manuscripts were locked away, their knowledge too dangerous to be released. The plaque honoring Holly was joined by another, commemorating the battle that had saved the library from Azeroth's return. In the quiet moments, Emily could still feel Holly's presence, a guiding hand in the shadows. The library, with all its secrets and dangers, had become her home, and she vowed to protect it with all her strength. And so, the Riot Library stood, a beacon of knowledge and a bastion against the darkness, its secrets guarded by those who understood the true cost of awakening the shadows. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please don't forget to like, and even better, like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I hope you have had or have a great day.